Alright then, hello guys. Today we're going to do a video on the Thavas Superior Ride and why it is one of the best tools for premium at the current moment. I know it's partially known amongst the Aqua community. I've seen it discussed on places like Wave Nation Discord channel. Go subscribe to that if you can. So what we're going to be talking about today is the ability to play premium Thavas with the new cards, with the aim of when going first, riding Thavas, using Thavas' skill to go into Lambros, and then at the end of the turn, we will, instead of riding down to Thavas, we'll be riding down to a grade 2, therefore forcing our opponent to then play their grade 3 turn without being able to stride outside of certain very specific lands. So the aim is to effectively abuse the ability to Soul Blast Thavas, and the card text is very important for the reason why we can do this. So let's take a bit of a closer look, shall we? So the main skill about Thavas that allows us to do all of this is that it says at the beginning of the battle phase, if you have 3 or more rested rearguards, discard a card from your hand, search your deck for up to 1 grade 4, ride it as stand. Shuffle your deck, and that unit gets plus 10,000 power and 1 drive until the end of the turn. And at the end of the turn, retire that unit and ride a grade 3 from your soul as rest. Now, the most important thing to note about this fight is the final part, okay? So it says at the end of the turn, you retire that unit, and then you ride a grade 3 from soul. So we can abuse the wording of do as much of the skill as possible. So we can retire. So if there's no Thavas in our soul, because we soul blasted it, just say off the skill of Lambros mid-battle, because there's no Thavas in our soul, we can now we retire the Lambros, and then we do as much of the skill as possible. And since we can't ride a grade 3 from soul due to having removed Thavas from soul earlier, we now have to ride another target. Okay, another suitable target from our soul. So we can make that a grade 2, which is the general aim of this maneuver, as it generally puts yourself on a really good footing, because with stuff like Gem Bowls, you can effectively ride down. No, not ride down, sorry. With Gem Bowls, for example, you can effectively generate a ton of resources, and your first stride is going to be devastating, especially if you've also had a grade 3 turn that's very powerful. And there's very few decks at the moment that can actually stand up in their own grade 3 turn to actually cause you some threat, unless they rushed you early game. You will generally be producing a lot of resources through this current maneuver. Currently, I'm going to show you a deck later on that I've been testing. I've been finding it quite useful in Premium. So one of the things I've also found is that a lot of people I've seen playing Premium Thavas, they're still trying to use the old stuff. And while I know that's enjoyable and it's fun to go back to times, but if you plan to win, do well, I suggest looking more towards the new stuff. So one of the things I would recommend is stuff like Pursuit Assault. This card in Thavas is just 2 cards, and that instantly unlocks Lambros for you on the turn. But also, even outside of that, it's got a good skill to Soul Blast 1, rest 2 rearguards, draw a card. That's pretty good as things go, as that can be used on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. You can use it, for example, grade 2. You can also rest himself when he's a rearguard. And so you can even reduce the cost on that. He also gains power based on the number of additional rearguard circles, and of course, because you're playing Thavas, you can stack them up, or you're going to generally be on at least 2 Axel circles during your next turn. And in general, that's going to be quite good as things go. So he's very, very, very useful. I'd recommend him running a large amount. Unfortunately, currently he's a promo, so we don't know when we're getting him. Hopefully, it's going to come some set soon. Generally, we're not quite sure yet. So the other thing to mention is the main way that we're soul blasting the Thavas to gain our grade 2 ride down is through the effect of Lambros, which is Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1. So you can use that to effectively not only attack but also produce the ride down. Of course, if, for example, we don't have the Counter Blast, you might be running a Bills variant that runs Terrific Coil, for example, or new Tidal Assault, allowing you to Soul Blast, and therefore you can Soul Blast despite not having any Counter Blast. In fact, this deck is very, very low level on the Counter Blasting, with generally only really the strides needing Counter Blast, which is kind of a really useful thing to have. One of the best parts about Aqua right now, and why it's really powerful, is that damage denial is really not that effective against us right now. That's always great. Dennis, he's iffy. You don't really want to run too many copies of him. You might want to run a few Nikki just to make sure you can keep the Lambros up, or if you can soul charge if you're starting to have soul problems, because there is a lot of soul blasting in this deck. Nikki also does provide the search, but it's only on Vanguard Ride, which I embarrassingly forgot about the first few times using this card, and that resulted in a very powerful deck, but, you know, once I realised it was only Vanguard Circle for the search, I kind of kicked myself really hard, because it was kind of lame. But anyhow, shall we move on to an example then? So, here we have our, going into our grade 3 turn, we have our hand here. Alright, so we'll draw. Draw one. Oh, we got another one. Alright, so the aim of this will be, so you'll be riding your Thavas, selecting your Axel of choice. For example, here we'll go Axel 2, because that's generally the one people will go. Allowing us to draw one card. Alright, very nice, very nice. Next, we will be looking to make ourselves some big columns. I'm just going to do this at random at this point. Okay, so we will just say cool. We'll need to call one of our boys. Call him here. They'll gain 5k power because we have one Axel circle at the moment. We can then use his skill, for example, rest him and him, effectively soul blasting one to do so. And we can draw a card. Yeah, one of the things is I'm running the copies of Nerissa because she's quite good, and later on in Stride you can actually make use of these rest abilities by make a powerful rearguard booster, and she also helps you provide soul for when you're using a lot of soul. But so next up, for example, we're going to call, you know, our Riptide Dragon, or actually, to be honest, it's probably safest to call this just in case we don't have our Thavas. Ideally, you will have your bonus Thavas, therefore you'll be able to ride into him next turn. Generally, you won't suffer too much, hopefully, in damage unless it's a deck that can rush you, or per se it's a deck that specializes in grade 3 or superior striding, such as golds. They can superior stride you, so maybe you wouldn't use this technique, because this is a technique that you use in scenarios where you know that you're going to gain an advantage, so you need to know the deck you're against to perform it very well. So then, okay, we'll call Tidal Assault next, alright? You know, and then we're going to activate the skill of Thavas, rest 1. Even if your opponent doesn't have any rear guards, you can rest 1. And, let's just try not to lose the Axel circle. You can rest 1 and still do 1, because you do as much of the skill as possible. The cost is the rest 1, it's not to retire, so do as much of the skill as possible. So now at this point, we can enter our battle phase, declaration of battle phase, discard a card. We'll search our deck. We will find us our Lambros. Oh, right way up, please. Alright, fantastic. Okay, and Lambros' skill will restand the field. Of course, this is a metaphorical field. I haven't put much thought into the way I've set up the field, but that's currently just the way things go. Of course, you might want to put more input into trying to get Nerissa into a restand, but in this scenario, we're operating with only a bit in soul, so if we look at our soul quickly, we have our grade 2 ride target. We can afford to soul blast him. If we are to put, we can put Coral Assault in and then have Coral Assault assume the spot of the Vanguard after riding down, if we did Soul Blast him. But in this example, we won't be using that, just in case you didn't have Coral Assault. So, of course, our Vanguard gets 10k and a drive. So we'll just go about our turn. So we'll swing Tidal Assault a few times. You know, then we'll swing our column here. Then we'll swing the powered up version of Coral Assault, which is good. And then finally, we will swing our Vanguard, so that's Soul Blast 1. So we'll then Soul Blast our Thavas. Alright, that's Soul Blasted. Oops, daisy. Into there. And now we'll do a triple drive. Yeah, all that very, very cool. Second check, third check. Of course, all effects onto here, so that because they restand off the skill of Lambros. Come to my hand, please. Oh, and we have a Thavas for next turn, which is good as well. And then we'll swing again. Now, this is a very powerful turn. Sorry, oops, daisy. It's a very powerful turn, as of course we're swinging very large numbers with this. We've got a triple drive on a Vanguard with 10k power boost. This is already hitting, 22k base. Tidal Assault, not that great, but if you're into a 9k, you might, as long as they don't hit a defensive trigger on the first swing, you get generally 2 attempts on their Vanguard if you're against a Protect or an Axel, but of course if it's Force, it won't be as effective. Then at the end of your turn, you will have, so let's just move him to soul, move her to soul, draw 2. So we're already stacking up our hand due to all these draw effects because the deck generally runs them. And now we're on a grade 2 again because we have to ride down, and since we do as much of the skill as possible due to Thavas' skill, as mentioned earlier, because we do as much of the skill as possible. There's now currently no grade 3 in Soul, so as it's not a cost, we can just ride down and it will be fine. So now your opponent is now going, well, I have to play a grade 3 turn now, I don't get a stride, which is very important for us, because then generally grade 3, generally most decks at the moment, well, there's quite a few decks at the moment, don't have the best grade 3 turn, right? They can do stuff, but generally not all of them can do as insane a grade 3 turn as we just performed. I don't recommend the mirror matchup for these decks, though, as neither player will ever generally get to stride if things go as planned. So in general, that's pretty good. Like, you have to watch out for a few things that can really actually hit you hard. Like, if you could risk losing the game if you didn't manage to get as much draw here. Like, this was an example turn where I had quite a decent field. I got to draw quite a lot, so I'm really set up for the next turn. Sure, I can't G-guard set up things, but of course next turn would come by. So we've taken a few damage. Oh, look, a trigger. So they almost definitely didn't manage to do much that turn. And a heal trigger. And so then we'd, of course, go draw one. Then we'd ride. Oopsie daisy. Get our Axel 2. Place it down there. Draw one more. And, of course, next we'd be looking to stride. We're definitely going to Gem Bolt here. Of course, we'd probably want to discard 2 other materials aside from these. Personally, with Gem Bolt Stride, I'd probably drop you and you. And so we'd then look into our extra deck, call out Gem Bolt, and hey presto, we've got one of the most powerful bonkers fields that the game has to offer, because, well, we have one of the best strides for just recovery, and there's very few decks can stand against this other than some one-shotty spaghetti stuff going on with DI and maybe Genesis at the moment. Generally, you're going to have a massive hand at the end of this turn. So you also get to hit really hard because we're running a lot of power boosting cards in this deck. A lot of cards that just get more powerful. So of course we call him, use his skill, make Nerissa bigger. This guy's always passively powering up as things are. You'll have a powerful Coral Assault swing. Tidal Assault's more here in this turn. Like, Tidal Assault's a win condition for later on when Alexandros is around. When you've got enough stride built up from the G units. But in general, you'll gain quite a lot of ability from all this. A lot of power from the swings, as you can now swing, for example, Coral Assault and Riptide Dragon 2 times each, and most decks are going to start be struggling with resources here already. They've just been forced to have a grade 2 turn, they don't get to stride. It's not the best place to be for them. You know, we've forced out their resources already with a grade 3 turn, because it's quite a powerful one with the grade right up into Lambros. Aside from that, now they have to deal with this many attacks, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 and 7, 8 for the Vanguard, and of course several of these, most of these are going to be above a certain power threshold that would at least take 2 to 3 damage triggers to actually stop the attacks, so that's a really good thing. And in the end of turn, of course, you're going to be drawing a ton, so the worst thing to worry about is decking yourself out. You're going to be drawing off your other rear cards as well, so generally you gain good defensive, good offensive. Personally, I'm going to show you the build very shortly for what I'm planning to do. Outside of this, Thavas is also still very, very good in terms of it's one of our few grade 3s that actually have a skill outside of Vanguard Circle that actually is worthwhile using. So you can retire things such as, you know, certain pesky problems, such as certain Elemental cards. Like, I cannot remember the name of it right now. You know the one I'm talking about. Oopsie daisy, what is it? Oh my goodness, I forgot the name. This is embarrassing. You know, the one that fifth battle or more. Oh my goodness, this is embarrassing. But anyhow, so moving along, let's have a look at the deck list then, shall we? Alright, so currently this is what we're running. This is the G zone. Running 3 Alexandros. Could potentially just take out 1 more Alexandros, add another useful G unit such as Ractome. To get the discard draw if we ever need it, though I rarely find I do. Generally, we're continuously flipping the Scalefilia over again with other skills. Panic mode button here. You know, generally can get some surprise finishes with this when you build up enough materials with Gem Bolt against certain decks. Generally, we're only ever going to be striding Gem Bolt once, but it's always safe to have a second one in case you get really low on resources because your opponent's really pushed you. Valios is there. He's quite useful for if your opponent's on low damage numbers and you've got a lot of power to push through and you don't really want defensive triggers to stop you. He also works very well into matchups such as Mega Colony. Lambros is our free boy. He's no cost, other than flipping himself in the G-Zone, which isn't really a cost at this point. And he also is useful for restanding units such as Riptide Dragon, as he can work after the 4th wave of the battles. Alexander, of course, doesn't really need much explaining. He's our swing boy. He'll just restand our tidal assaults and make them very, very large, and other units as well. He's generally our finisher. He's how we want to finish. Ice Barrier Dragon, that's the best defensive G-Guard we've got outside of Iohannis when it comes to free G-Guards. Iohannis has a cost, and is, of course, our GB1 card. He's still very good. It makes your field invulnerable, so that you can build a big field of Gembold, and then next turn just make it unhittable, so generally you keep it outside of certain matchups that can retire fields. In general, we find that, alright, so I'm running the 2 and 2 Nikki at the moment, because I'm just finding, unfortunately, I'm using him mainly as a target for resting at the moment. I might change up this list a bit, because I could run potentially 4 of the new Nikki, or I can run 4 of the old Nikki. Old Nikki's useful. You can tutor out the actual Thavas, the ride target, as you also have Riptide Dragons to reveal with his skill, and then you can also, when riding Thavas, you can use him to tutor out another Thavas, and effectively gain, if you tutor out another Thavas, so that, and discard a different card, so you have your ride for next turn as well. He's quite useful in that way, so that's why potentially both of them have use in this scenario. Next, if you look at Nerissa's, we are on 4 at the moment. This can be adjusted for other things, but Nerissa is there for generally just becoming a soul fuel for your soul. Also allows you to draw, gain big power. In general, quite good. And also during your stride turns, you're not going to be wanting to use Nerissa. You're not the skills that rest cards can actually be detrimental to you. So using Nerissa, you can actually not have such detriment to those, and you can actually gain off them instead. So you can just draw, gain 2 powerful back row boosters, or call a card off the top of the deck if you're really desperate. Dennis currently, I'll talk about him in a second. Baragios is there just to try and keep the consistency and finding our grade 3, because we need to find Thavas generally for this to work. I had one bad test game earlier where I did not find Thavas. I had to ride Riptide Dragon. Luckily, my opponent was in a similar situation where he didn't find his ride target, so eventually it became a slugfest, and eventually Gembold did pull through. Anyhow, moving on to grade 2s. We are running the 2 copies of Dennis, because he's more of just an insurance card. He's generally filling a spot that I can't find currently a card that I really want to fill. I could potentially remove him for example, another restander, such as our little boy over here, our terrific Coil Dragon. But currently I've been finding this build better with 2 Dennis at the moment. It just feels better when I play it, which is a bad excuse for playing it, but anyhow, moving on to the promo, he's very, very good. Great to have another Assault card. It's basically Assault the deck at this point. We've got Coral Assault, Pursuit Assault, Tidal Assault. Hopefully I'll make that an archetype. That'd be really fun. But no, aside from that, he's a very, very good boy. I hope we're getting him soon. He gains power over the game. If you decide to ride down into normal Thavas and just keep going and keep getting Axel circles, he powers up very quickly, quickly becoming a plus 10k or plus 15k. Provides the draw power early game. With Dennis and him, you can generally just provide yourself resources that a lot of clans can struggle against. So in the example of you're facing down golds, they're going first. You can't attack them because you don't want to give them damage. You can then throw down Dennis in this and start generating advantage just without actually attacking, allowing you to keep drawing, allowing you to keep adding materials to your fields. It's very, very useful. You've also got the Coral Assaults. Don't need to really explain them. They fuel the soul. They're very powerful boys. They're generally very, very useful and versatile. Tidal Assault, they're your multi-attackers to help fuel things like Riptide Dragon and get other things going, and also your win condition later on in the game. Chuck a few triggers on them. Can cause a lot of damage. Then, of course, we have our 4 ride targets. Useful for retiring things. Thavas is just quite good. I like the Axel marker. It's just a very, very good plus. Of course, we have to run Lambros as well to perform this in the main deck. And the problem, of course, will be that Lambros is not a useful ride target, though in some cases you can actually ride him normally and put yourself to 15k base or stand your field. So I've had some games against Mega Colony, for example, in testing, where I ended up riding the Lambros, restanding my entire field, even though it was under the effect of Gridora, the Gridora stride stopping me from standing during my stand phase, and that was quite amusing. It was a bit of a meme, but you know, it was fun. The main thing, I'm running him at 2 right now because he's generally quite useful to have. He becomes a 15k beat stick rear guard if you don't use him. Going second, he's not as useful, becomes stride fodder generally, or a large rear guard. But going first, you want to guarantee that you have at least one in deck, and unless you're running more Nickies, if one goes into damage zone, you're going to be in trouble. If you're only running one, I wouldn't recommend running more than 2. 2 is kind of like a balance and equilibrium. Finally, we have the Riptide Dragons. These guys are fantastic beat sticks, one of my favourite cards in the game. Generally, as he can't attack until 4th battle of the turn or more. But when he does get 20k power, and of course, when you start restanding him with stuff like Lambros and Gembold, you generally do reach a point of some terrific power and swings, because Aquaforce currently doesn't lack swings, it lacks power. And that's, I think, a big mischaracterization that I think a lot of people have seen, is that they've tried to build Aquaforce to attack a lot and then questioned why they couldn't kill their opponent and why they had certain earlier weaker points in certain points of the game. Riptide Dragon just keeps you strong throughout the entire game. You can do funny things with Dennis if you ever get him off the top of the deck. Restands off 2 cards, as I said. And in general, he can just be a real power piece. Generally, he also becomes the target for the opponent to retire, so your opponent starts to focus on him more. So in general, it's quite useful. I think that just about covers everything, other than we've got, of course, normally I'd use that, but I couldn't get an updated version, so I can't use the new Kelpie Rider as much as I love him. Of course, we've got the 4 heals, we've got 4 crits, 4 stride crits. Of course, the other crits are the put into soul, draw a card, works very well with stuff like Valios, can be used after Gembold's skills to draw even more cards, so you can call them off Gembold. Oops, daisy. Very useful, powers up the Vanguard. Stride crits, that just adds to consistency, though often I keep them in hand because there's a lot of things to guard at the moment. And of course, 4 PGs. Draw PGs because Pascal's just such a good boy. It just adds to the consistency greatly, though you might think we don't need to draw, but it's just very useful not having to put slots down for perfect guards, and generally, guard restricts at the current moment. So, that's my general thoughts on why you should be trying out the Ride Chain. Well, not the Ride Chain, sorry, the Ride Down, and why it makes this deck absolutely bonkers in Premium, because currently I have had quite a good record with it. I've seen a lot of success. There's honestly so much to do with the deck. It feels really good to have loads of different options and decision making to make the deck run. There's tons of things to think about when running it, soul blasting and keeping track of that, what units you need to rest and what not. One of the better things about the resting units, I should mention as well, is it allows you to balance out your Gembold turns to allow you to actually not have, so even if you place badly or if you place them in certain ways, you can then rest those units, so Gembold's skill is not interfered with, as Gembold does require your entire field to be rested with an Axel circle to actually start restanding things. You want that restand, and you also get the extra retire, of course. But generally, yeah, this deck functions very, very well. It's very, very smooth, at least from my own testing at the moment. I'm sure you guys can come up with something even better, I'm sure, but please feel free to fiddle around with this one. Currently, the only thing I'm worried about is the promo, as we don't know quite the exact date we're getting it. Hopefully soon. But anyhow, thank you for watching the video, and enjoy riding down, making your opponent really angry because they can't play the game, and generally having fun. So, thank you very much. Thanks for watching.